Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of Horse's Mouth Live. My name's Ellen Rogan, and as always, I have guests that bring great information to help you in every area of your life, especially your business. And I'm so excited to have Ann Curtin with us here today, and I'm going to give you her official bio in a minute. But we're going to really talk about how to make yourself indispensable for your clients. Now is a perfect time to do that. And this idea of how do you listen in a deeper level, or how do you really know what clients need in addition to what they're telling you they need? And we have such an expert to help us with this. Ann Curtin is a longtime friend of mine, and we had kind of not been in touch for a while, and she reached out in
Mhm.
the last few weeks. We've had all these reasons to be back in touch, and was so excited that she accepted our invitation to be on with us today, because Kim is deep into knowing what goes on with advisors. She is the founder and CEO of the Wall Street Coach. She's worked with financial services professionals and still does for many, many years, and has been profiled in all sorts of publications like Fortune and CNN, Money, and the AP, and worked with helping C-suite executives really accelerate their personal and professional success. She's worked with all sorts of big financial services companies like Bank of America and Morgan Stanley, and is an amazing speaker, is also a podcast host. And she wrote a really amazing book called Transforming Wall Street, A Conscious Path for a New Future. And she interviewed over 50 CEOs, financial advisors, spiritual advisors, and brings this amazing background to our conversation. So, welcome, Kim. It's so great to be here with you.
It's so much fun to be with you too, Ellen. It's been a long time, so I'm really excited to be back in the conversation with you.
Me too. Yeah. And before we get into this, I just want to mention to all of you out there, when someone comes to your mind,
Mm,
my encouragement for you is that you reach out to them, because often there's a reason that there's some reason you're supposed to be connecting. And
absolutely.
sometimes there's not, and you just, reconnect, but often there's a reason. And I feel like that's what happened with Kim and me, that she reached out, and all of a sudden there's ways that we're really supporting each other, and it's beautiful. So I'd encourage you to do that.
Agreed.
So this idea is, we were talking ahead of the show, Kim, about how clients will say something to you in terms of what they need, but for an advisor to be able to go deeper and figure out what they really need is a key to being indispensable. So talk a
Yeah.
little bit more about what you mean by that, and how an advisor might actually do that.
What I'm going to do is just tweak that wording and say that I really believe most of the clients that come to advisors tell them what they want. And because most of us haven't understood really clearly the distinction between a want versus a need, I feel most people speak in the language of what I want. And I'm going to just, presume some of the things that I imagine people say to an advisor. I want, peace of mind, they may be saying. I want to have security, for down the road. Or I want to be sure that I have educational funds ready for my kids. And what I suggest to advisors is that they become kind of connected to what is the need driving the want. Uh, there's a language called nonviolent communication that I've been a student of for probably 20 years now. And that language distinguishes the difference between a want versus a need. And what I suggest to advisors, that I've counseled over the years or coached, is see if you can become somebody who understands what the needs are underneath the wants that people are telling you. And here are a couple of needs that I think you undoubtedly are going to run into with your clients. I have a sheet that I'm going to reference called the Universal Needs List, and things like security, support, harmony, peace of mind, efficacy, effectiveness, and the there's so many more, but that's just a handful of probably the needs that people have when they come to advisor. So my suggestion is to an advisor, listen to what people are saying that they want. But if you can start to, once you become fluent in this language, you can hear underneath what that person's saying. Maybe respect. Like sometimes, respect is not something most people tell us they need, but inevitably, most of us do have that need. So let's say somebody's retired. I think a lot of advisors bump into this as well. People who have been in charge of their lives or their businesses, then they come to the advisor and they want to be the CEO of that advisor as well. And that advisor's like, I've done my homework. I know what's best for you. Trust me. Well, the way to that trust is realizing, oh, you know what? This person probably needs some respect. So that deference just might build the bridge to trust because that person is needing to kind of still be in charge of something. Even if you still are going to be the one in charge of their investments, just give them that sense of empowerment, even if you're still making those decisions, because it probably will elicit trust quicker. That was a long
So
answer, Ellen.
no,
Sorry.
that's perfect. So the question I have is, okay, I'm in conversation. We'll stay with your example. And I've got a retired client in front of me. We'll call him a he, and that he was a C-suite executive or ran his own business and now no longer doing that. How do I know that it's respect and not something else that he's really looking for? Like,
Yeah.
what would be the clues along the way?
If you find that this person is seemingly in need of some sort of acknowledgement, respect is a human need. And if you're a former C-suite level executive who was running a large organization or in a position of authority, then you're used to having respect. You're used to having deference. You're used to somebody, kind of asking for your opinion. So I think there are flags that are little indicators along the conversation that perhaps you can pick up on. And what I suggest is that you trust yourself. Look, at the end of the day, I would love for you to be familiar with the needs. I would rather you get familiar. Look at this sheet. I give it to every client and I can send it to anybody who wants it complimentary. I mean, this is out there online as well. You can just Google universal needs list. If you begin to get familiar with what these are human needs. Everybody has these needs. If you've ever had a need for respect, you can tune in and tap into what it felt like when you were disrespected or when somebody didn't value your opinion. You can relate to that. So just look for that. See if that's what's at hand. At the end of the day, if it's a C-suite executive, the other need I would imagine this person probably has in the moment is a need for freedom, a need for independence, possibly a need for choice. So it could be that you need to ramp up the options you're putting in front of them so that they feel they have choice and autonomy.
So let's use maybe a little bit harder example of one of those needs. Is there a need? So let's call it freedom, that you have a sense, and I want to ask some more about how we start to sense that in a deeper way. But if the need is freedom, then what is the advice? I get the respect thing. You ask for opinions or choice. Maybe you give them, instead of here's what I think you should do, you could do this or that, and here's why. But let's say it's something like freedom. How do you then incorporate that into the conversation?
So I have a non-negotiable need for freedom myself personally, because I've done this work for so long. Among our needs, there also lies non-negotiable needs. So at the end of the day, I really like to have security. But if I have to have a choice between freedom or security, I will pick freedom every day of the week and twice on Sundays. Because that one for me, if I don't have it met, I am deeply unsatisfied, deeply frustrated. So if I were in a conversation with a financial advisor who really kind of spoke to me about the flexibility of my own choice, that if I change my mind, I can come back to them. There's certain things you can say to somebody who really honors freedom that is going to make them think, okay, this person gets me. This person understands that and look, I'm able to articulate that I need freedom. But most of the people that come to a financial advisor, they're not going to speak to that, but you're going to pick it up in the stories they tell you about who they are. Most financial advisors, when they're doing their, to find out if they're a match for the client, they'll be, or prospect, they'll be asking them questions. Tell me about yourself. Tell me about your hopes and dreams for the future. Tell me about your challenges currently. And in those stories, you're going to hear, again, it takes some practice for you to listen to what those flags are. But what I say is over time, the first thing I say to an advisor is if you want to do this successfully, you have to become in tune to your own needs. What are your needs? The only way you can become really empathetic towards the needs of somebody else is if you understand your own. Are you getting your own basic needs met right now? And that's something that I would say, be connected first with your own, and then you're going to have a heightened sense of awareness of the experience that person sitting across the table from you is going through and what they're need.
Looking at that universal needs list, is that something that in general, if I look through that list, I'd go, oh yeah, that's me? Or is there some other kind of deeper exploration to know what your needs really are?
Oh, every time I give this list to a client or, anybody I share it with, I can tell you without a split second of hesitation, I'll say, I want you to circle all the needs you're not getting met right now, personally or professionally. In 2 seconds, people can circle. They'll be like, oh, this and this and this and this and this. Like easy as anything. And then what happens, here's the most amazing thing about needs, is that when you begin to realize all the needs you're currently not getting met, what happens then is I tell them to turn the sheet over, and on the back, here are the feelings we have, all of us, when we don't have needs met. Anger, frustration, confusion, apathy, paralyzation, sadness, anger. These are just human feelings that everybody's going to have when their basic needs aren't getting met. And the thing we talked about too, Ellen, at the beginning of this show was how right now it's such a stressful, pressure-filled, kind of, very scary time. Like I think everybody's on edge. We're all exhausted from the quarantine. We're worried about the coronavirus. I think a lot of us are tense about the election. So right now, I think there's a lot of feelings among all of us, any human being on the planet right now, who is coming, especially in the United States, where we're feeling angry, irritated, discouraged, hopeless, concerned, overwhelmed, right? And what I want to say to everybody is, first of all, those feelings, we've not been encouraged to be comfortable with the harder to be with feelings. And that you need to realize there's nothing wrong with you if you have those feelings. They're human and they're indicative of needs not getting met. Certainly none of us have had the need for, continuity met recently. None of us have had the need for ease or, a sense of, peace of mind. Like these are things that we've just not had. Freedom, we haven't had freedom. Adventure, most of us can't go out for the weekend for the hikes or whatever the things are that we get our adventure fix from. Clarity or a sense of effectiveness. I think most of us, at least in the United States, don't feel like no matter what we're doing, anything's being effective with at least protecting ourselves or our families from the coronavirus. So I think that it's just beginning to understand that, wow, if I don't get my basic needs met, I'm going to have hard to be with feelings. And how do I become perhaps a better steward of these needs for myself, for my family, for my clients? And then we are able to experience the feelings like joy, equanimity, ease, peace of mind, optimism.
So if you're and clients may be more comfortable now sharing some of these feelings, like I'm nervous, I don't feel comfortable with this. To some extent, like many of the things you mentioned are outside of our control. Is the advisor's job to, or is it helpful for the advisor to be just be there with empathy and compassion? Or
Yeah.
is there some way that there may be a way to help the client see those needs could be met even in the face of this?
Yeah, such a beautiful question. I'm so glad you asked that. At the end of the day, most people are really starving for empathy. And I think advisors could easily get themselves caught up in a false sense of responsibility that they have to provide the solution or the need, satisfy the need. I know that on one hand, I'm suggesting, yes, do your best to satisfy the need underneath the want. But at the first and foremost, there are going to be needs that are not your place to meet. That is okay. And to empathize with someone, to truly not fix it, but to just say, I hear you. That must be hard. I imagine that's challenging. Those are, that's a willingness to be vulnerable. If you, for empathy to take place, which is very different than sympathy, big distinction between those two, to step into empathy, you have to relate to something within yourself where you feel the same way or have felt the same way. So the challenge is for you to be able to empathize with somebody else, you probably have to be somebody that practices it with yourself. What I liken these needs to, getting them met or not getting them met, is to oxygen. If you are, just like they say on that airplane, if you guys can remember back when you used to fly, the first thing they say is if anything happens with the oxygen, is you put the mask on yourself first before you assist anybody else, including children. That is because everybody knows if you don't have some oxygen, your ability to facilitate somebody else getting oxygen is going to be hindered. That is the same for needs. So if you could just learn how to first empathize with yourself, and I imagine every financial advisor right now is challenged way beyond the even '08 situation, right? This is a really hard time to elicit trust with other people. People are frightened about their money. They don't know what's going to happen with the market. So I would say empathy is the gate to that trust being built. And empathy is more important than even the concept of meeting their needs, because if you can show those people that you're in front of, including yourself, your family members and friends, that you hear them. Yesterday I was really challenged. I had a couple of things going on. I was talking to a friend who didn't solve it for me. She didn't fix it. There was nothing she could do, but she let me complain, and she said that must be really hard. And that's all I needed from her in that moment. I knew what my own solution was. I knew what I had to do. But in that moment, I felt a little bit of relief because I felt like she's just empathizing that it's hard. And it was hard. And I made it through. And your client or prospects can make it through. But empathy is number one in my book.
So a couple things. I want to go back to more of a definition of empathy, but to just make a point on this not always having to solve things. And I apologize, I don't remember who the guest was who said advisors have a hard time not advising. And sometimes that's exactly what you need to do, is just listen, and that
Yeah.
not always try to fix things. But Kim, can you give a definition, or start maybe with this distinction? You said it is not sympathy. So maybe the
Yeah.
distinction between the two, and is part of it
Sure.
defining really what empathy is.
Sure. Uh, Sympathy is, ooh, that must be really hard on you. Ooh, that must not be fun. Like, you can hear that there's like a little bit of judgment in there, perhaps a little bit of like holding it at arm's length. Whereas empathy, one of the best definitions of empathy I've ever heard is actually from Brene Brown, who talks about being willing to climb down into the hole, the dark hole, frightening hole that somebody's in, and just sit with them and say, ooh, I know what it's like down here. It sucks. I'm by your side.
Yeah. So I I encourage all of you out there to Google the Brene Brown empathy video, because to me, that made a huge difference in my life, actually watching that video. And she explains the difference between, as Kim did beautifully, the difference between sympathy and empathy. But she talks about how sympathy could be, well, at leasting it. So,
That's right.
someone loses
Silver
their
lining it.
job. Yeah,
Silver
silver
lining
lining
it.
it, which is so
Yep.
what I have done historically for people. Like, well, at least you're in Hawaii and it's sunny. Like,
That's right.
and as soon as right after I saw that video, I caught myself mid sentence saying, well, at least, because I always
Yeah.
wanted to make things better for people. And it's not like
Yeah.
that's not a bad thing, but it's
Yeah.
really annoying to people sometimes, which I'm
Well,
learning. Like my Mary Sunshineness can really annoy people instead of just
yeah.
being there with them.
Yeah. I mean, look, your motive is so pure. Your motive is you are ultimately hoping to stop somebody's pain and to dial back their suffering. And that is a gorgeous quality. And yet, if you think back to all the moments when you yourself, and I'm saying this to the audience, when you have had pain, when you have suffered, when you have been discouraged, who were the people that had you be able to make your way through it? Inevitably, you will remember the people who were not fixing it, who were able to just sit with you. But to sit with somebody in their pain asks a lot. It asks a lot of us because that is a moment of our being vulnerable and not immediately coming up with a solution. And it's uncomfortable. And very few of us have been taught how to sit in discomfort. And so that is, it's kind of like a cobweb. You mentioned my book. That's why I put the book together, because in the book I talk about, there are kind of 5 practices that, in my opinion, are sort of a cobweb to how to navigate this world. And one of those is, yes, understanding your needs, having empathy for yourself and others. But the other one is something called emotional connection. I call it emotional non-resistance, something I learned from Raphael Kushner, who teaches us how to be with hard to be with emotions. And if we have, and especially advisors, they, of all people, need to learn how to do this, because they're inevitably going to be with people who are having hard to be with feelings at some point along their life journey. And to be able to sit with somebody with those hard to be with feelings and just hold space for them is going to take some practice if they have never learned how to do it themselves, for themselves, or for any. And if you don't have it done for you, I think it's really hard to emulate.
So why does this matter? Why does this make an advisor more indispensable, or why is this important? If an advisor's like, look, I want to allocate their portfolio, I'll help them hit their goals. Like, that's not my job to sit there with
Yeah,
a box of Kleenex on my table and be
right.
there with them.
Yeah. Well, I guess what I want to say is, if financial advisors want to work with human beings, they're probably going to need to learn this, because there's not one person who's going to come into your office who's going to be a robot and only connect to the bottom line. There was a study, and I researched before this interview to try to find it. There was a West Coast finance firm that hired a kind of a research company among their thousands of clients to do a survey of why their clients were with them. These were all of their clients. Why are you with us? And they expected, of course, the number one answer to be because of the returns. That was number 4 or 5 on the client's answer. You know what was number 1, Ellen?
Mhm.
Because the relationship I have with my advisor. That's the number one reason. And this firm had total disruption after that information came through, because they realized all their marketing strategy was putting the focus on the wrong thing. So they upended how they presented themselves when they got that from their own clients, that the number one reason was the relationship, the sense of trust, the sense of camaraderie. And my advisor just gets me.
Mm. Yeah, that makes so much sense. Money is such a complicated issue for everyone.
Yes.
I was
Yeah.
an econ major in college, and they taught us that money was just a medium of exchange. People are rational decision makers. Well, anyone who's been in the business world or the financial world for more than a minute knows that's ridiculous. People are not
Exactly.
rational. And it
No.
is like this. You and I have had conversations about this, how complicated money can be for people. And
Yes.
so this makes total sense. And I was just thinking back when I used to work with clients, like if they cried in my office and I was just holding the space for them, and not judging and not having them feel like weird about it. I always had Kleenex on my conference room table or next to it. So it was
Yes.
easy. It
Yes.
wasn't a whole big thing. It
Yes.
was just, it built the relationship. Not that I was wanting people to come cry in my office, but it just
Of course.
happens sometimes. People with family members, they get scared about things, whatever
Of
it
course.
is.
This
Yeah.
is called being human. And I think, the business world and especially Wall Street, look, I've coached in finance 14 years and before that work there. So 24 years. I get the whole, kind of bravado. I get the whole like putting on your armor before you walk on the floor. Like I get that there's a whole energy and it's kind of, and it's kind of like you're going to have to be really tough to navigate it. And yet, I promise you, at the end of the day, you're still dealing with human beings. It doesn't matter how thick the armor is, it doesn't matter how expensive the suit is the person's in. At the end of the day, you're dealing with a human being. And part of the reason this could be a challenge for some people is that they haven't accepted their own humanity. They're trying to be a robot. They're trying to just blow past their own emotional, uh, discord and ignore it and just get back to business. And, at the end of the day, we are going to always be human beings. We are never going to be human doings. So how do you begin to come to terms with your own humanity, your own vulnerability, your own frailty, and that in turn will allow you to be more comfortable with the person sitting in front of you. And I promise you that the indispensable phrase, I learned that from Seth Godin. One of his most amazing books many years ago is a book called, Are You Indispensable? And that book taught me, if you are not coming from a place of standing out, because how many financial advisors are there? There's a lot.
311,000. I actually just researched this. I have
God.
an answer.
So, how are you going to become indispensable to those clients? And the only way you can do that is to stand out. And I can promise you, if you get really excellent at empathy and being able to hear, one of the clients that I had spoken to, it was a prospect actually. He didn't even need to become a client because in a 5-minute conversation, we got to the heart of the matter. He'd retired, he purchased this expensive sailboat, and he was still not happy. And I guessed, and I said, did you get the sailboat for respect? Is that why you bought it? Because you just retired 2 years ago. You're not getting respect on a day-to-day basis. He was like, oh my God, is that why I bought the sailboat? I said, maybe. And he thought about it and he said, no, I haven't gotten respect. I thought maybe at the yacht club, you start to get, he didn't get it. And I was like, well, how do you feel about the boat now? He's like, I could give a damn about it. I just wish I never got it. But he didn't he thought he was selfish. He was like, why did I get that boat? I was like, because you have a human need for respect. You've had it for 25 years. Walk in the hall of your company. You've sold it now. And so you're not getting respect on a day-to-day basis. But there is a low cost way that he could get his need for respect met uh, outside of that. And that's why I feel, advisors get in tune to this. Even the direction their clients potentially get directed in will change if you're able to help them distinguish between the wants versus the needs. But again, to do that, you're going to have to be able to be clear on your own and have a little bit of empathy for yourself.
Beautiful.
Linchpin.
And
Linchpin is the title of Seth Godin's book. The subtitle is Are You Indispensable?
thank
Linchpin.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Kim, I know you have, besides your book, you're an amazing coach and have other programs. If people want to get a hold of you, what's the best place to do that?
thewallstreetcoach.com, Kim at thewallstreetcoach.com. And I'm excited. I'm also doing a lot of work lately with traders. And I'm launching a new course called tradingherojourney.com.
Yeah, so love that. If you guys want to take a deeper dive on your own needs and wants, reach out to Kim, find out what she has to offer. And Kim, thank you so much for being here. So fun to spend time with
Thank you.
you this way
Thank you
too,
so
and for
much.
all the great information.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Ellen.
and for all of you out there, thank you so much for being here with us. Kim talked about being indispensable and all the things that are important to do that. And I would encourage you to check out the Extraordinary Advisor Masterclass, which it starts November 6th. So there's still time to sign up. And to get more information about that, you can go to horsesmouth.com/masterclass. And for all the things that Kim said, in addition to getting in touch with what's going on with you and being an empathizer, really good at empathizing, it's answering the question, how do I stand out from the crowd? And we're going to talk about how to find your superpower and how to deeply connect with clients and in other ways to do that. How do you let people know what you're really about in business? Like, what's your business manifesto? How do you set
Mhm.
goals that work for you? So it's all sorts of important things that address, like that research that Kim mentioned about what people really want from you. Yes, they need to know you're competent and you're really good at what you do and that you're trustworthy, but how do we really build that relationship with them? And that's what we're going to be covering. So I would love you to come play with us with that. And check out the website and the course on horsesmouth.com/masterclass. And thank you for being here with us as always. Um, my suggestion is to you to contemplate today, how big of a positive impact are you willing to make? Maybe how deeply are you going to empathize with your clients, as Kim inspired us to do? And to remember to be great and create great.